Today is December 18th, 2014. I'm Lila Bringhurst, and I'm interviewing B.J. Bunting. And what is your full name, B.J.?
Well, Beverly James Bunting is my full name.
That's your full name, but you prefer to always be called B.J.
Yeah, it's easier to get around because they mix it up.
Yeah. So when and where were you born?
I was born in the San Jose Hospital in 1927, January 5th.
Oh, you got a birthday coming up.
Pretty quick.
So your mom had to go to San Jose to get to a hospital. There was nothing here locally?
I cannot tell you that. I don't know why.
Okay. So how did your family come to live here in this area?
Well, my great-grandfather, Howard Overacker, came in 1853 with his brother, Michael Overacker. And one lived in Centerville, and, well, both of them actually, they went gold mining.
Yeah, this was...
That was their deal. Well, they found out they didn't do too good in the gold, so they came back, and Howard purchased a ranch right off of what we call the Niles, Centerville Road, which Peralta, and where the old, I shouldn't say old, but the sheriff's substation right by Martha, right across the street almost was where their home was built. And he had 250 acres in there.
Wow.
From Sequoia Street, Paseo Padre, down to almost Shin Road, where the Shin property was.
From Paseo Padre?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
So anyway, that piece of land there was his for farming. And that's what he did. He also was 11 times as a county supervisor in Alvarado and in San Leandro, and then back to Alvarado. They had changed. Yeah, right. And you'll find this in the Historical Atlas of 1878. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things written there. His brother, Michael Overacker, had 250 acres also, right at Walnut and what we call Old Highway 9 or near Mission Boulevard. And it went clear back to almost where the old City Hall was built in Fremont.
Is that part of the school for the deaf? Is that part of the...
Yes, right. That was the Overacker property.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was Michael Overacker.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the Buntings, when did they come?
In 1873, my grandfather came with his mother to Centerville, and they were looking for a piece of property. Apparently, we don't know the true picture of it. Was something that they had either knew somebody or what have you, and they purchased, I believe it was about 18 acres of land.
And what was your grandmother's name?
Evelina Mitchell Bunting.
And was her husband dead at the time? You said she came?
Her husband had been dead, I don't know how long.
Okay, so she came as a widow with her son?
Right.
Okay.
And that was John A. Bunting.
Okay.
John
A. Bunting. And then he married the Overacker girl?
Well, he married Fleda Overacker, which was Howard Overacker's daughter.
Okay.
And they had met by horseback there at the place that they had purchased, the Buntings had purchased. But anyway, and
sounds romantic.
Well, but the thing was that for some reason or other, my would be great grandmother knew basically the Bunting family, or the Overacker family, the Overacker family. And Fleda would not tell them where my dad was basically, where we're getting mixed up here. My great-grandfather, my grandfather.
Your grandfather, yeah.
It would not tell him where their place was. And then later on, then they became acquainted, and marriage came forth.
So, so were they all farmers? The Buntings and the Overackers, basically farmers?
Farmers, right, at the time, yeah.
What kind of crops would they?
Apricots were there at Sycamore Farm.
Okay, that was on Thornton.
No, Thornton.
Yes.
Right.
That was a big, big thing in Fremont. What's now Fremont? Apricots.
Well, the farming had a lot of different fruit crops here, not just apricots.
So what were some of the other crops?
Cherries, pears, peaches, strawberries, lots of vegetable crops, So it was all a farming area, beautiful soil for farming,
At that time, there were 8 little towns in what's now Washington Township, but this was mainly Centerville then?
Well, Fremont turned in 5 towns.
5 were from Fremont, went to Fremont, right.
1956.
So this was basically in Centerville and Niles where your families lived.
Right.
What do you remember about your grandparents? Your grandparents?
Yeah. What do I remember?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I never knew my grandfather. He was dead before I came into this world. Yeah. But Grandma Fleda was quite a proper person, and she wanted us to be proper, and yet she wanted us to be normal people that went out and did what was right within your community. They didn't want to be disgraced, so consequently you had to do what you were told to do.
So your grandmother was quite an influence in your life.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Well, she was family. She was definitely family. My mother was family.
Right.
Yeah, my father ruled with a hard hand.
Yes. So the children were raised with a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
But a lot of hard work too, right?
Oh, yes.
So you started working at a young age, right?
A very young age.
What'd you do?
Well, my first job basically was cutting a box of apricots, a 50-pound box of apricots. I was just a little kid, and believe it or not, a 50-pound box, they would pay you 4.5 cents to cut an 8-foot tray and approximately maybe a quarter of another 8-foot tray the 50-pound box would cover. Well,
4.5 cents?
4.5 cents.
So
but they didn't pay.
You just cut it with a knife, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was just one twist. Yeah, and then drop the pit out and lay them flat on a deal.
Did they treat them with sulfur before they dried them?
They sulfured them after they were on the trays.
Yes.
They stacked these trays on a cart, and then they offset the trays so that the air would carry the sulfur through. And then they rolled them into what we call a sulfur house. It probably had maybe 10 to 15 trays high. And then in the pit there was approximately, I would say, a quart of sulfur or more.
Oh, in the pit
they
below
put down in the pit, and then you lit it with the paper and match, and then got back once you knew that it was burning, and then it burned for about 12 hours.
Overnight. You leave it overnight?
Yeah.
And then you dry it in the sun.
Then you took them out and laid them out so that they would put the trays, lip the trays so that they'd have a little bit of tilt
Uh-huh.
And it went down the line. It's easier to pick up. That was the reason for it. And then you hoped that the weather stayed good, and that you
Right.
didn't get a rain. If you did
it
get a
for
rain,
July?
you had to resulfur.
If it did rain.
Yes, yeah.
This would be July and August you'd be doing this?
Yeah, and usually the 4th of July was about the time apricots would come in.
Oh, okay.
And so whatever the season produced, sometimes heavy, sometimes light. You never knew.
So that was your Bunting grandmother. What about your Overacker grandmother?
Okay, now you're throwing me a curve on that one.
Okay. You have two grandmothers, right? Was one an Overacker?
Yeah,
Okay. So did she have as much influence as your grandmother Bunting in dealing with you as a child?
yeah, no, I never, let's put it this way, I think we're mixing something up here, and
Okay.
I'm not getting it.
Okay,
Let's see.
we'll drop that one.
Yeah, okay.
So what are some other early childhood memories?
Well, the memories were that basically, it was in the early 30s, Depression time. Things were really rough, for work. The people coming in from the Midwest, when they had the Dust Bowls and the tragedies that were going on, and they were coming out with everything on their cars, just loaded, maybe a car towing another vehicle behind. Sometimes you see wheels that on the cars where they put an extra tire around the original tire and wired it on. These people would want to work, but there was no work. Basically, what they would pay them 12 cents an hour to pick apricots if you could get a job. Things were totally bad. That in the creeks, under the bridges, we had people in suits with top hats, what have you,
Well dressed.
well dressed, no income, and here they are just trying to get something to get by. And they would call what you say jungle up, where they make a camp and get a whole can and make a pot of coffee and what have you. They would do anything to survive. And yet there was little crime. And these people were usually no problem. I can't recall problems as a kid. And I'd be out and walking around these people, and they didn't bother us. Little kids, You would think you'd be scared to death to have your kids out look at today, And people fear. We had no fear.
Well, they were just people who were good farmers and had hard times and came to
Just
California.
everything, not only farmers.
Oh, okay.
A lot of were seamen, business people, just lost everything.
So did local families help them a little bit? Did they give them food?
Yeah, well,
or-
this is what happened, that, if somebody came to the house or what have you, and we had something that you could give them a cup of coffee or a sandwich. The sandwiches were simple, And Dad always said that, if somebody's wanting work and wants to do something around the place, let them do something, but give them a little food. And we were marked. It was marked on the, they say.
Oh, they marked the fence
They
or
marked
something?
it on the railroad tracks.
On the
We
railroad
lived near the railroad tracks, yeah. And they had markings on the fence that that's a good place,
Wow.
And so anyway, these were the things of the time.
So you would have been about let's see, you were born in 27, so this was your...
You know, I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old. I can remember way back then, you know. And we lived on the old Highway 9 and Morrison Avenue, now is Pickering.
Okay.
And Highway 9 is now Overacker.
That's right. Mission Boulevard wasn't there.
And that's right. That was
Mission
built in
Boulevard came later.
37. They started in 37, 38, 39. Yeah.
So what's now Overacker was the main road.
It was Highway 9
I
to
didn't
Santa
realize that.
Cruz, yeah.
Clear to Santa Cruz?
Yeah. Highway 9 went to Santa Cruz, and so did 17. Went down to San Jose, and then they went out to Los Gatos and across.
Wow. And then Mission Boulevard came in later then.
That's right. And,
37?
yeah, 39. They
39?
built it in 30. Eden and Smith built the bridges there, and I don't know who did the road construction, but that was in 37, 38. In fact, when they built the bridge over the Niles, Alameda Creek, they had several thousand sacks of cement, and they were in cloth sacks in the creek bed. And they had a heavy rain and the water come down, and it ruined all that cement.
They just had it stored there.
Yeah, stored there to build the bridge.
To build the bridge.
Over
and
the
then it
creek,
set
yeah,
up.
yeah.
Oh, what a disaster.
Yeah. So that was Eden and Smith.
So Overacker would have had a bridge over the creek too at one point. Did it from Niles over Overacker? Was there another bridge?
No, all right, well, that's Highway 9.
Okay.
Yeah, it came out of Niles by the cannery.
Okay.
Now, the road actually was above, which was Vallejo Street, coming into Niles. Where the road is now, the old highway was below towards Niles,
Okay.
towards the town. All right, then it changed and went up by Vallejo Mills and
Yes.
over the tracks, and then came back by Niles Canyon Road, came in through an underpass, which was very, very low, to the old, by the cannery, and then you went either direction, which is Highway 9.
Was the cannery, is that the building that burned a few
Oh,
years
it
ago?
burned, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Even Victory Motors, I saw that on fire as a kid.
Wow.
And that was a big, big building right there by the cannery.
So the S&A film industry, that was before you were born?
Before my time.
Yeah, you didn't,
No,
you didn't
no,
have anything to do with that.
No, I just saw some of the building there, that was it.
So tell me about some of your schoolmates.
Well, I had a lot of schoolmates.
Well, did you know Jack Parry?
Oh, definitely, you know.
What about Jack?
No, well, Jack, you know, through the years, the Parry family lived right near us. In fact, their house was moved onto the old Highway 9 when they were building the upper road. And and Jack was a neighbor to us. We were there on the Pickering place. Not the Pickering place. Come on. Here we go. Hit my senior moment there.
That's okay.
But the Cutting place. And that's the Cutting family in Berkeley. So the
I've heard that
Cutting
name before.
Boulevard.
Were they pretty prominent, the Cuttings?
Cuttings, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. They had a house there, and right off of what we call Pickering Avenue today.
And Ellsworth, Vernon
Ellsworth. Yeah, well, Vernon, his father had a business there in Niles. He had the insurance business. He had the Ellsworth building. And Jones was a partner with Ellsworth. And they had their two houses right off of, right next to the Pickering property. And they basically had moved from where you are now on Mission Boulevard there. And
So the house on Mission
Yeah.
is, was that built by Vernon's parents?
I can't answer that.
That was built in the 1880s, I believe.
Yeah, I can't answer that.
So Vernon wasn't living in that house then when you knew him? He's
It
closer.
seems to me that he was in that house at that time when I was in the earlier time, and then later his mother and Jones lived near the railroad tracks, and not this, I'd say, towards the bay from Mission Boulevard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So who else was in your class that you remember growing up with?
Oh God, you name it. There wasn't practically a person around that we didn't know, or they didn't know us, because they take one look at you and they say you're a Bunting, you know. And, yeah. And the thing was basically is, does your old man know you're out here? You don't belong here. Get home. And usually your father knew by the time you got home that you were somewhere you shouldn't have been.
They reported in. Wow.
Yeah.
Couldn't get away with anything.
No.
So, what do you remember about the wells and the water tanks and the towers? Did everybody have their own well for water?
Well, the windmills, windmills were common, and pumps were very few at that time. And if they were the old-fashioned belt pumps, they had where they had a big long belt running to a motor. My voice is hitting me for some reason. Maybe we better stop. Is there anywhere we can get some water?